O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory above the heavens. Out of the mouths of babes and infants you have found a bulwark because of your foes, to silence the enemy and the avenger. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings that you are mindful of them? Mortals, that you care for them. Yet you have made them a little lower than God and crowned them with glory and honor. You have given them dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under their feet, all sheep and oxen, and also the beasts of the field, the birds of the air and the fish of the seas, whatever passes along the paths of the seas. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. This is the word of the Lord.
What is one of the best purchases you ever made that cost less than $50? Define best however you wish. It could be something that gave you great satisfaction, or has a sentimental value, or is indispensable to your work or saves you time. Conjure up this item and why you believe it's so marvelous. One of my best purchases cost less than $20. It was a bird feeder. I confess that at age 30, a bird feeder was not even on my radar. But sometime around the age of 40, I bought my first feeder. It seems to be a trait I inherited from my parents. In no time, I was captivated by the way those little birds would fly down at blinding speed and then stop in an instant on that little perch. They'd nibble a few seeds and then catapult themselves back up into the trees. I love watching the miracle of flight. The feeder has also proven its worth because it provides sustenance for the birds. It's very gratifying to think that you have saved a few of these tiny winged creatures, especially after a snowstorm's made food scarce. The feeder was one of my best purchases because I love to observe the variety of birds. I'm especially captivated by those of the different colors. Don't you love seeing a brilliant red cardinal, or a blue jay, or a goldfinch? However, the main reason the bird feeder ranks so highly is because it helped to change me. It heightened my awareness of the miniature miracles of our world. We humans are easily awed by the grand features. A spectacular sunset that lights up a turquoise sky with streaks of coral-colored clouds. Immense mountains that rocket up out of the earth with snow-capped peaks. Enormous oceans covering 70% of the Earth's surface and teeming with creatures in its depths. The incomprehensible vastness of space and the infinite number of stars dotting the night sky. From an early age, I revered these majestic hallmarks of the universe. But my bird feeder helped me awaken to the small wonders of the world. Feeding birds smoothed some of my rough edges. Now, I was not an oblivious elephant trampling through a tulip path. I recycled. I turned down the heat in the wintertime. I turned off the lights when I left a room. However, the bird feeder helped to intensify my awareness of the fragile side of creation. Changes in the weather, or cutting down a forest, or pouring chemicals into a river can have profound and lasting repercussions. In the beginning of the 19th century, it was commonly believed that all the animals that had ever existed were still around. When fossils were unearthed of some unknown animal, people believed it was still out there somewhere, we just haven't spotted it yet. In 1803, when President Jefferson dispatched Lewis and Clark on their Northwest expedition, he fully expected them to find out on the plains woolly mastodons. Incredible. Hard to believe that people could be that naive. Not only do we know that animals become extinct, but scientists believe that of all the species of animals that have ever existed, 99% of them have disappeared from the face of the earth. Feeding birds pushed me to consider the ways I either enhance or diminish God's creation. Gazing at a sunset, hiking up a mountain, swimming in the ocean have only a minute effect on the earth. But feeding birds and planting trees and growing vegetables can have a significant impact. According to the current secular worldview, the earth is an accident. The water, the soil, the vegetation, human beings, it's all just here by chance. And we're just lucky enough to have all these things at our disposal and to use them however we please. People of faith see things differently. One of the foundational teachings of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, is that God is the creative force behind all that is. God's the energy behind the Big Bang and the ongoing power that brings forth ever-evolving life forms. Feeding birds deepened my reverence for God's creation. It expanded my awareness that all life is sacred. Not simply human life, but everything that's been created, because it has been created by God. Feeding birds helped me to grasp what 13th century theologian Meister Eckhart meant when he said, "Every creature is a word of God." Not only are human beings created in the image of God, but every element of the universe has a spark of the divine within it. We need to allow Eckhart's words to seep into our souls. Every creature is a word of God. Say that with me. Every creature is a word of God. Now, if we listed ways to boost our spiritual lives, I suspect we would say, pray, worship regularly, live according to Christian values, read the Bible, help somebody in need, give generously, work for peace. We must add to our list, cultivate a reverence for God's creation. Most of us have a diminished sense of enchantment with the world. We take for granted the mind-boggling ecological system that God has created and continues to create for sustaining life. treasuring all of God's creation as sacred should be obvious, if for no other reason, the simple truth that this is the way the Bible begins. That magnificent poem that speaks of the beginning of the evolving universe by comparing it to 7 days in a week. It declares that God's Spirit hovers over the void. And then God speaks, "Let there be light." Science states that the cosmos began with a big bang, a fireball out of which everything in the universe was born. Our recent distinguished speaker, Matthew Fox, writes, "We were all in the beginning because we all share the common atoms that were birthed in the original fireball and subsequent supernova explosions. The light that today's science sheds on our beginnings is awesome and potentially sacred. It can stir us to wonder and gratitude and reverence again and ignite fresh discussions about our holy beginnings." Feeding the birds helped to open a place within me where God could work on my soul by reorienting my awareness and multiplying my appreciation of God's incredible creation. Now, all of us are to some extent takers. We take water to drink, to bathe, to clean our clothes. We take trees for lumber to build our homes, our tables, our dressers. We take vegetation, animals, and fish to eat. All of us are takers to some extent. And sadly, some are only takers. Our Creator wants us to use these resources of the earth to shelter ourselves, to feed ourselves, and to enjoy life. But that's not all. God also expects us to be good stewards of the earth by cherishing God's creation and by renewing the natural environment. God calls on us to be not only earth takers, but also earth keepers. Feeding the birds somehow deepened my resolve to be less of a taker and more of an earth keeper. When I was a child, the Cold War was at its peak. The threat of nuclear war hung over us like a thick fog. In school, we did those ridiculous duck and cover drills, where we dove under our desk and covered up our heads with our arms. Yes, this is surely adequate to survive a nuclear blast. But rather than calming our anxiety about war, it planted within our minds the image of large mushroom clouds dotting the earth and wiping out all life. If indeed the earth had a limited future, then why worry about preserving the environment? There's not going to be anyone around to enjoy it. So we sang songs like, "Sha la 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 la, live for today." Commercials said, "Grab all the gusto you can." That mindset continues for many. They see the earth like a store where you can take whatever you like off the shelves and not worry if it ever gets restocked for someone who might come by later. We must overcome any mindset that leads to ravaging the earth. It's urgent for people of faith to embrace the world as a gift from God, a sacred gift that we are to revere and nurture so that we can hand it on to our grandchildren and grandnieces and nephews. A world with pure water and clean air and thriving forests and multitudes of wildlife. I encourage you to discover your own path to what helps you bless and keep God's creation. Perhaps it's working in a freshly tilled garden, or becoming much more observant of nature whenever you go out and walk. Becoming more observant of the whole planet and its systems. Caring for an animal. Recycling whatever you can. Planting trees. Jesus said, we are to love God with our heart, mind, strength, and soul. And what better way to love God than to love what God has created?